Marcus Rodriguez had been a combat correspondent for 8 years, but nothing had prepared him for the assignment in the mountains of Afghanistan. His camera bag felt heavier than usual as he climbed the rocky terrain alongside Delta Company, sweat dripping down his face despite the cool mountain air. The soldiers moved like shadows, their boots barely making a sound on the loose stones. Marcus tried to match their silence, but his equipment kept rattling softly with each step. "Keep low," whispered Sergeant Thompson, the squad leader who had been Marcus's guide for the past week. "Intel says there's been sniper activity in this area for months. Nobody's been able to locate him." Marcus nodded, adjusting his grip on his Canon 5D Mark IV. This camera had been his trusted companion through 3 different war zones. It had captured moments of heroism, tragedy, and everything in between. Today felt different, though. The air was thick with tension, and even the experienced soldiers seemed more on edge than usual. The mission was supposed to be routine, document the patrol's efforts to secure a suspected weapons cache in a nearby village. Marcus had done dozens of these assignments before. Take photos, write the story, send it back to the network. Simple enough. But as they reached the ridge line overlooking the village, something felt wrong. "There," Thompson pointed to a small cluster of buildings about half a mile away. "That's our target. But we'll wait here until nightfall. Better cover." Marcus set up his equipment behind a large boulder, testing his camera settings in the dim afternoon light. The mountains created strange shadows, and he knew he'd need to be ready for quick shots once the action started. He'd learned long ago that in combat zones, you rarely got second chances for the perfect photograph. As he adjusted his telephoto lens, something caught his eye through the viewfinder. A small glint of metal from a ridge across the valley, maybe 2,000 yards away. He focused the lens, trying to get a clearer look. There it was again, a brief flash, like sunlight hitting glass or polished metal. "Sergeant," Marcus called quietly, "I think I see something." Thompson crawled over, accepting the camera. He peered through the viewfinder, adjusting the focus slightly. His expression changed immediately. "Son of a gun," he muttered. "That's a scope reflection. There's someone over there." The sergeant handed back the camera and pulled out his radio. Within minutes, the entire patrol was repositioning. Marcus found himself in the middle of what was quickly becoming a tense standoff situation. Through his camera, he watched as the soldiers tried to locate the exact position of the potential sniper. Hours passed. The sun began its descent behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Marcus had taken dozens of photos of the soldiers in position, their faces tense with concentration. But the mysterious glint from across the valley had disappeared. "Maybe it was nothing," suggested Private Wilson, a young soldier on his first deployment. Thompson shook his head. "Rodriguez saw something. And in 8 months here, every time someone's reported scope flash from that ridge, we've lost people within 48 hours. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. He was potentially looking at a legendary figure, a sniper who had been terrorizing coalition forces for months. Intelligence reports called him Ghost because he seemed to appear and disappear without a trace. No one had ever gotten a clear photo or confirmed sighting. As darkness fell, Marcus switched to his camera's infrared settings, a feature he'd had specially installed for night photography. The patrol was preparing to move on the village below, but Thompson decided to leave 2 men behind to watch the opposite ridge. "Rodriguez, you stay here with Williams and Chen," Thompson ordered. "Keep that camera ready. If you see anything, and I mean anything, document it." Marcus nodded, settling into position between the 2 soldiers. His camera was equipped with a powerful telephoto lens and low-light capabilities that were better than most military equipment. If the Ghost was still out there, Marcus might be the first person to actually capture him on film. The hours dragged by slowly. Williams and Chen took turns on watch while Marcus monitored the ridge through his camera. The infrared setting created an eerie, green-tinted world where rocks and trees became strange, alien shapes. Every shadow could be hiding an enemy. Around midnight, Marcus's camera started acting strangely. The infrared display began flickering, showing strange patterns of light and shadow that didn't match what he could see with his naked eye. He'd never seen this malfunction before, and it was getting worse by the minute. "Something's wrong with my equipment," he whispered to Chen. "Can you fix it?" Marcus tried adjusting various settings, but the camera seemed to be picking up signals or heat signatures that shouldn't exist. The display showed bright spots and movement across the valley where everything should have been cold and still. He was about to shut it down when one of the bright spots moved in a distinctly human pattern. "Wait," Marcus breathed, focusing the malfunctioning camera on the movement. "There's definitely someone over there." Chen looked through his night vision scope. "I don't see anything." But Marcus's broken camera was showing something that normal vision couldn't detect. Whatever was wrong with the infrared sensor, it was picking up heat signatures from an impossible distance. And one of those signatures was moving with purpose across the opposite ridge. Marcus began taking photos, even though he wasn't sure what the camera was actually recording. The malfunctioning display showed the figure moving from position to position, always staying low, always in cover. This was no ordinary soldier. The movement patterns were too sophisticated, too careful. "I've got movement," Marcus whispered into his radio. "Ghost protocol. Someone's definitely out there." Thompson's voice crackled back immediately. "Are you sure?" "My camera's malfunctioning, but it's picking up heat signatures. Someone's moving across the north face of the ridge, heading toward the village approach." Within minutes, the entire patrol was repositioning based on Marcus's intelligence. But the mysterious figure seemed to know exactly where to move to stay hidden from normal surveillance. Only Marcus's broken camera could track him. For the next 3 hours, Marcus played an invisible game of cat and mouse, following the heat signature through his malfunctioning viewfinder while directing the patrol's movements by radio. It was like watching a master at work. Every movement calculated, every position chosen for maximum tactical advantage. As dawn approached, Marcus realized he had documented something unprecedented. His camera's malfunction had allowed him to track a ghost, literally. The infamous sniper who had eluded capture for months was right there in his photos, moving through terrain that should have been impossible to navigate undetected. But as the first rays of sunlight hit the valley, something unexpected happened. The heat signature Marcus had been following suddenly stopped moving. Through his telephoto lens, now working normally in the daylight, Marcus could see a figure in camouflage sitting perfectly still against a rock formation. The sniper was looking directly at him. Even from 2,000 yards away, Marcus felt the weight of that stare. He realized with a shock that the ghost had been aware of being watched all night. This hadn't been a hunt. It had been a game, and Marcus wasn't sure who had been the hunter and who had been the prey. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his camera focus. This was the moment. The first clear photograph of the ghost in daylight. He could see details now that the infrared had missed. The sniper was wearing a mixture of military gear from different armies, and his rifle was unlike anything Marcus had seen before. Custom work, probably built from scratch. But what struck Marcus most was that the man wasn't hiding anymore. He was sitting openly on the ridge, rifle resting across his knees, looking directly at Marcus's position as if posing for the photograph. Marcus took the shot. The moment his camera shutter clicked, the figure across the valley raised one hand in what might have been a salute or a wave. Then he simply melted back into the rocks and disappeared, as if he had never been there at all. "Did you get him?" Chen asked, having watched the entire exchange through his own scope. Marcus lowered his camera, staring at the small display screen on the back. There, clear as daylight, was the first confirmed photograph of the ghost. But something about the image troubled him. The man's face was partially visible beneath his improvised camouflage, and Marcus had the unsettling feeling that he had seen that face before. "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "I got him." Thompson's voice came over the radio, urgent and excited. "Rodriguez, please tell me you documented that contact." Marcus hesitated for a moment before responding. Something about this entire encounter felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. "Confirmed. I have clear photographs." "Outstanding. We're moving to your position. The whole command structure is going to want to see this." As Marcus waited for the patrol to reach him, he scrolled through the dozens of photos he had taken during the night. The infrared images were strange and distorted because of the malfunction, but they clearly showed the progression of someone moving across impossible terrain with inhuman skill. But it was the final daylight photograph that bothered him most. The more he stared at it, the more familiar that partially visible face became. It was older, weathered by years of sun and wind, marked by scars that told stories Marcus could only imagine. But somewhere in his memory, he knew he had seen that face before. When Thompson and the rest of the squad reached Marcus's position, the excitement was immediate and infectious. Word spread quickly through military channels that the ghost had finally been photographed. Within hours, intelligence analysts were examining every pixel of Marcus's images. "This is incredible work, Rodriguez," said Major Patterson, who had flown in specifically to debrief Marcus. "In 8 months, this is the first confirmed visual contact with the target. These photographs are going to change how we approach this entire operation." Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on the analysts who were enhancing and examining his photos with advanced software. On their high-resolution monitors, details became visible that hadn't been clear on his camera's small screen. "Sir," said one of the analysts, "we're getting facial recognition hits." Major Patterson leaned forward. "Confirmed identity?" "Still processing, but the preliminary matches are unusual." Marcus felt a knot forming in his stomach. "What kind of unusual?" The analyst turned his monitor so everyone could see. The enhanced photograph showed the sniper's face with startling clarity. Computer-generated lines highlighted facial features while databases scrolled through potential matches. "The facial structure and visible scars match several entries in our database," the analyst explained. "But the matches are flagged with a problem." "What problem?" Thompson asked. "All the matched individuals are listed as killed in action, most of them over a year ago." The room fell silent. Marcus stared at the enhanced photograph, and suddenly the familiar feeling clicked into place. He had seen that face before, in the intelligence briefs he'd studied before coming to Afghanistan. That face belonged to Sergeant First Class David Chen, a Special Forces sniper who had been reported killed in action 14 months earlier. "That's impossible," Major Patterson said quietly. "David Chen is dead." "I was at his memorial service." Marcus looked around the room at the confused faces of soldiers and analysts. "Sir, what if he's not dead? What if something else happened?" "What are you suggesting, Rodriguez?" Marcus wasn't sure exactly what he was suggesting, but the pieces were starting to form a disturbing picture. What if the ghost isn't an enemy sniper at all? What if it's one of ours? The implications of that question hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. If Marcus was right, then everything they thought they knew about the situation was wrong. The ghost wasn't a terrorist or an enemy combatant. He was an American soldier who was supposed to be dead. Major Patterson turned to the analyst. "Pull everything we have on David Chen. Service record, mission reports, circumstances of his reported death. I want it all." As the analyst began pulling files, Marcus continued to stare at the photograph. In the sniper's eyes, even captured from 2,000 yards away, there was something that bothered him more than the mystery of a dead man walking. There was intelligence there, calculation, and something that might have been sadness. "Sir," the analyst said, According to records, Sergeant Chen was part of a classified operation called Deep Shadow. His unit was conducting long-range reconnaissance when they were ambushed. No survivors were found, but the bodies were never recovered due to enemy activity in the area. So he could have survived, Thompson said. Possibly. But if he did, why wouldn't he have made contact? Why would he be operating alone in the mountains for over a year? Marcus had a theory, but it was one that made his stomach turn. What if he did try to make contact? What if something went wrong? Major Patterson's expression was grim. You're thinking he's been abandoned, left behind. Or worse, Marcus said quietly. What if the mission he was on was so classified that officially he had to stay dead? The room erupted in uncomfortable silence. Everyone present understood the implications of what Marcus was suggesting. If David Chen had been deliberately left behind for operational security reasons, then he had been living in the mountains for over a year, surviving alone, watching his own army search for him as if he were an enemy. That would explain the sniper attacks, Chen said thoughtfully. Not attacks on coalition forces, warnings. He's been trying to get someone's attention. Marcus scrolled through his infrared photographs again, looking at them with new understanding. The ghost's movements hadn't been those of someone trying to attack the patrol. They had been someone trying to guide them, to position them where they could observe him without being in danger. The scope reflection I saw yesterday, Marcus said suddenly. He wanted me to see him. The whole thing was deliberate. Major Patterson pulled out his secure radio. I need to make some calls. If Rodriguez is right, then we have a situation that goes way above my pay grade. As the major stepped outside to make his calls, Marcus continued to examine his photographs. In the infrared images, he could see that the ghost had been carrying equipment that was clearly American military issue. More importantly, in several shots, there were clear views of a sniper rifle that Marcus recognized as an M24 SWS, standard issue for Special Forces. Sergeant Thompson, Marcus said, in your intelligence briefs, how many casualties have been attributed to the ghost? Thompson consulted his notes. 17 confirmed kills over 8 months. Any pattern to the targets? Thompson paused, reviewing the information more carefully. Actually, yeah. Now that I think about it, most of the casualties were during night operations, and they were all... He stopped, his face growing pale. What? They were all Taliban or foreign fighters. The ghost never actually killed coalition forces. We just assumed he was responsible for attacks that happened in his area of operations. Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The ghost hadn't been hunting coalition forces. He had been protecting them, eliminating threats in the mountains while remaining officially dead. But something had gone wrong, and now he was trying to make contact the only way he could. When Major Patterson returned, his expression was unreadable. I've made contact with higher command. This situation is now classified at the highest levels. Rodriguez, your photographs are being transferred to Special Intelligence. What about Chen? Marcus asked. If he's alive out there, that's no longer your concern. Your mission here is complete. But Marcus couldn't let it go. That night, as he prepared his gear for transport back to the main base, he made a decision that would change everything. He had made copies of his photographs on a separate memory card, something he did routinely for backup purposes. Looking at the final daylight photograph of David Chen, Marcus knew that the man sitting on that ridge had been waiting for over a year for someone to see him, to recognize him, to remember that he was supposed to be one of the good guys. The next morning, as Marcus boarded the helicopter that would take him away from the mountains, he made a decision. This story wasn't over. David Chen, the ghost of the Afghan mountains, deserved better than being abandoned and forgotten by the army he had served faithfully. Marcus Rodriguez had always believed that the truth was worth fighting for, even when that fight was against his own side. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying him away from the mountains where a dead man still walked, Marcus began planning how he would tell the world about the ghost who wasn't really a ghost at all. The camera malfunction that had led to this discovery was just the beginning. The real story was just starting to unfold, and Marcus was determined to see it through to the end, whatever the consequences might be. In his bag, the backup memory card containing the most important photographs of his career felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. But Marcus Rodriguez had never backed down from a story, and he wasn't about to start now. The ghost had waited over a year to be found. The least Marcus could do was make sure the world knew the truth about Sergeant David Chen, the man who had never really died, even though his own army had buried him. The helicopter banked sharply, heading toward the main base. But Marcus was already thinking about his next move. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a mission to bring home a soldier who had been left behind in the mountains, forgotten by everyone except the enemy he continued to fight. David Chen was still out there, still protecting coalition forces from the shadows, still hoping that someday someone would remember that he was supposed to be one of the good guys. Marcus had the photographs to prove it, and he was going to make sure the right people saw them, no matter what it cost him. The truth had a way of coming to light, even in the darkest mountains of Afghanistan. And sometimes, all it took was a camera malfunction to expose the most important story of all.